Unpopular opinion. Elden Ring was a disappointment. So for me, it breaks down into a few main areas of disappointment that I'm going to talk through with you that cover the pressures of creating an open world, for me lead to limited creativity, character vulnerability, atmosphere, challenge, and lore and setting. So let's kick it off. About halfway through Elden Ring, I just lost any motivation to play. Instead, I actually went back and played Dark Souls 1 for a couple of weeks actually. And why on earth would I get this longing that I've got this brand new, shiny, wonderful From Software game in front of me? Perhaps it's the intricately woven and semi-linear world of Dark Souls with those shortcuts that feel like a euphoria-inducing maze escape. If you'll allow me to speak bluntly, I rode through a lot of Elden Ring on torrent, as by the latter half of the game I realised the generic makeup of this game is just as follows: vast areas with trees, rolling hills, a few mob enemies wandering, and the odd glowing mushroom by a tree. I am being facetious, of course, but typically this is how it felt to me towards the end. The landscape above ground, bleak at times, peppered with many below ground distractions, but following a distinct blueprint again. Oh, is that a cave? Oh, it must mean upgrade materials. A door. Oh yeah, catacombs or a tomb. The spell of potential and discovery soon wore thin as I knew what to expect, albeit a different riff on the last one. And of course, outside of Evergales and the familiar ruins you may stumble across, I found myself constantly drawn to the legacy dungeons, as branded by Miyazaki and team for this title, the shining beacons amongst a landscape of mundanity. Eventually, this of course is where the true Elden Ring game exists. I made this discussion point to a friend actually, that if you cut out the wide open hills and stitch together just the legacy dungeons, there exists the actual From Software title as we know it. There is the Elden Ring. In summary, a varied set of levels that, whilst at times touched on the wonder of level design of titles past gone by. Looking at you, Lendell Capital, I mean, what a level. We have to give praise and credit to Elden Ring where it's due. But overall exists a good, not great From Software game. Leading me to my final point in this section at least. From Software have always reused assets, right? And I've never took umbrage until Elden Ring. Tree Sentinels, Margit, Godfrey, two Mogs, let's not even get started on the mini-boss enemies, pumpkin heads, all that crazy stuff that at first was filled with wonderment and appeals at the first time you've seen it. Once you get to 8 of those in, I'm sorry, but therein lacks an uninventive open world, dare I say it. Spoiler alert coming up, I found myself utterly deflated when I was fighting another version of Margit, which could essentially have been his phase 2 in the first fight, and this being the main boss of arguably the greatest level in the game, Lendell Capital. But for every gale or catacombs where I fought another version of something else I'd fought 6 times earlier, I just felt sad. Really. This all for me points at a very talented development team being stretched to populate an inverted commas open world with content for the sake of content. So let's segue into my next section. Let's talk about how you interact with the world as the player. In every From Software title I've played, and I've played all Souls games dating back to Demon Souls, there's one word that springs to mind: vulnerability. The story of an average everyman being thrown into a hostile, ever-threatening world and overcoming impossible odds. We'll talk about lore a little later, however Elden Ring lays down the same foundation: a tarnished, unworthy, prophesied to overthrow a god. And this feeling of being a vulnerable but tenacious creature amongst this hostile world rings true for the first 30 or so hours, let's say, of this very long game, 80 to 100. Limgrave, mistakenly venturing into Siofra River, Weeping Peninsula, but soon, and certainly then for the latter half of the game, I felt I was on a complete power trip. Somber weapons such as bubble horns that destroy dragons in 30 seconds, or blades that can smash down volcanic eruptions for 20 meters or so, subsequently healing me with every hit landed. Let's remember none of these are difficult to attain. There is no legendary dungeon that few players have been able to defeat holding a fabled weapon, as I had imagined prior to release. And don't get me wrong, the sheer wealth of options is credit to Elden Ring's strengths, but it comes at the cost of allowing me, and I'm sure many other players, to become complacent, favouring bombastic weapons over skill. And yes, my next point. Spirit summons. For anyone that says there are no difficulty options in Elden Ring, or for that matter in easy mode, this is it. Miyazaki and team had received significant media outlet criticism over the incredible challenge posed by the inimitable Sekiro, their prior title to Elden Ring. I wonder, did this have something to do with it? An offline way of summoning extremely tanky or powerful cooperators. There's not a single boss fight in this game where spirit summons were exempted to my knowledge. I appreciate all these options. They're options, right? However, when you're fighting another Morg or Margit or Godfrey and the inspiration levels are low, the option to just get it done and move on to hopefully something more curious becomes all too tempting. I use spirit summons, right? At times for the reasons aforementioned, and the only times I felt that raw challenge was when I imposed very restrictive limitations on myself, refusing core mechanics of the game, such as fighting Tree Sentinel butt-arse naked at the start of the game without levelling up. It's a challenge I've set for myself and it's on the channel, shameless plug. With mechanics such as spirit summons being so core to the game, you have to wonder, are these really options to be ignored, or is wider appeal and lower barrier of entry the future of From Software? Let's finish up this long rhetoric with something around lore and atmosphere. I'm sorry, George, but for me the lore is forgettable and generic. A ring of power, where I've ever heard that before. Various contestants fighting over various thrones. Ring of Thrones, anyone? I appreciate dark medieval fantasy can only be stretched so far, but come on. George himself said he is not a gamer and had not seen Miyazaki's prior work. If he had, perhaps the bar for his contributions would have been set much higher, and the yardstick I have to use is Bloodborne. The rich, interwoven, macabre world of Bloodborne, dripping in atmosphere, gradually unwrapping from a neo-Gothic Victorian world filled with bestiality into a Lovecraftian horror of epic proportions. For me, the Western influence on the writing as handicaps Miyazaki's wild imagination. The atmosphere is key, of course, with those bells tolling, citizens hiding behind locked windows at lamplight during the hunt. In Elden Ring, really, from an atmospheric perspective, we have a hodgepodge of biomes lacking organic synergy. They don't roll into one another. And where is that atmosphere, the brand of the game that will stay with you long after the credits roll? You could argue it's From Software's version of Skyrim or a Breath of Wild. That's fine. But ask yourselves, where is that poignancy, that atmosphere that will stick with you long after the credits have rolled? This is all objectivity, this is all my opinion, and this is all my raw feelings about the game. I thank you for listening to me. Do not let this video undermine the epic work that From Software have put into this title. But, and I could talk about all of the positive stuff, right? For me, this is the criticisms. These are the things I was unhappy about. Love to hear your opinions below in the comments. We all have an opinion. Please respect that. And I thank you for watching. Take care.